Geosaurus. Just that name, Mother of Giants Lizard. Wow, it really sparks the imagination, doesn't it?
It certainly does. Quite a name to live up to.
Okay, so let's really dig into this. We're doing a deep dive today into the world of this extinct marine reptile, late Jurassic, early Cretaceous.
That's right. And we've got quite a bit of scientific info lined up. The picture keeps getting refined.
Yeah, and our goal today really is just to pull out the most interesting bits, the key stuff about Geosaurus for you. Make it clear.
And it's fascinating, like you said, how our understanding comes together. It's based on ongoing scientific work. Paleontologists collaborating, building on old finds with new analysis. It really refines what we know.
Like putting together a huge ancient jigsaw puzzle.
Exactly. And the picture is constantly being updated.
Okay, so we're looking at the current state of the investigation, basically. Where do we start trying to understand this mother of giants lizard?
Well, the logical place is always classification, right? How does it fit into the tree of life?
Makes sense.
So, super broad, it's domain Eukaryota, kingdom Animalia, phylum Chordata, the standard stuff. But it gets more specific and more helpful for us when we get to class Reptilia.
Okay, zooming in on the reptile branch.
Precisely. Then, clade Archosauria. Now, that's important because it includes dinosaurs and modern crocodiles, so that starts to give you a sense of its neighborhood, evolutionarily speaking.
Oh, okay. Related to some big names then.
Definitely. Then clade Pseudotuchia, that's the line closer to crocs than dinos. And then clade Crocodylomorpha, which is, well, crocodiles and their extinct relatives. So we're zeroing in.
Right, so it's firmly in the ancient croc family line, you could say.
Yeah.
Where does Geosaurus itself slot in?
That takes us to the suborder Thalassutia. These are often called the marine crocodiles.
Marine crocodiles. Okay, that's a great image.
Yeah, think crocodiles fully adapted for ocean life back in the Mesozoic. And within that, the family Metriorhominidae, these guys were the real seagoing specialists.
So Geosaurus is a major player in this saltwater group.
Absolutely. Then we narrow it further. Subtribe Geosaurina, and finally the genus Geosaurus, named by Cuvier way back in 1824.
Wow, 1824. That's early.
It is. And the type species, the original one, is Geosaurus giganteus. That was named even earlier, 1816, by Summering. Giganteus, the name definitely hints at something impressive.
It really does. So Giganteus is the main one. Are there other confirmed members of this Geosaurus group?
Yep. Right now, we recognize 3 valid species. There's the original, G. giganteus, then A.G. grandis, named by Wagner in 1858, and also A.G. leporenti, identified much later, 1957, by de Belmis and Strenelowski.
Okay, 3 currently accepted species. Got it. Now, the big one. What did these things actually look like, these giants?
Well, based on the fossils, Geosaurus was pretty big, around 2.5 to 3 meters long. That's roughly, 8 to 10 feet?
Decent size for a marine reptile.
Definitely. And what's interesting is how similar it looked to another related one, Dacosaurus. Both had these relatively short skulls and really noticeable curved teeth.
Curved teeth.
Yeah.
That sounds predatory. Not like it was eating seaweed.
Exactly. The shape, the serrated edges on those teeth. It strongly points to a diet of large prey. These weren't built for picking off small fish neatly. They were for slashing, tearing.
Oof. Built for business then.
Pretty much, it was a marine carnivore hunting in the ocean and probably spent its whole life out there at sea.
A true ocean predator of its day. That's quite an image. But what about, their life cycle? Did they haul out on land to lay eggs like modern crocs do?
That's a really fascinating question. Because you see, unlike some other big marine reptiles from back then, like plesiosaurs and ichthyosaurs.
Which gave live birth at sea, right?
Exactly, which is amazing in itself. But for Geosaurus, we haven't found any eggs. No nests discovered. Nothing.
Huh. So a big question mark there.
A huge one. It means a key part of their life is just a mystery. Did they mate on land, in the water? We just don't have the evidence. It's a piece of the puzzle we're still looking for.
So the mother of giants name is almost ironic, given we know nothing about their actual mothering.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, the name emphasizes the size, definitely not the reproduction side. And speaking of our understanding, the picture we have of Geosaurus has actually changed quite a bit over the years. This is where the story gets kind of interesting.
Oh, okay, I'm listening. What were the early ideas, the misunderstandings?
Well, for a long time, many drawings, even scientific reconstructions, were really based heavily on one particular specimen. It was initially called G. suevicus.
G. suevicus.
Found in Germany, late Cambrian age. Pretty complete fossil, so it became sort of the reference point. But the thing is, G. suevicus had this noticeably long, narrow snout. and small, pointy teeth.
Wait, that sounds different from the short skull and slashing teeth you mentioned for G. gigantea.
Exactly, quite a contrast. So the early image many people had of Geosaurus might have been based on this, well, this outlier, as it turned out.
So a case of mistaken identity influencing the whole picture.
Pretty much. Wasn't until 2009, really, a big reevaluation paper by Young and Andrade. Their research showed pretty convincingly that those long-snouted forms, like G. suevicus, they actually belong to a totally different genus, Crocosaurus.
Ah, so the 2009 study sorted that out. G. suevicus got moved.
Yep. It was like finding a key piece of evidence that cracked the case, Cleared up that mistaken identity.
That happens a lot in paleontology, right? Reclassifying things.
Oh, absolutely. And there was more reshuffling. 2 other genus names, Brachytaneus and Halimanosaurus. They're now considered junior synonyms of Geosaurus.
Meaning they were names for the same thing, basically.
Essentially, yeah. Older names that referred to what we now know as Geosaurus. The established name takes precedence. And then, starting around 2005, these things called phylogenetic analyses really started shaking things up.
Phylogenetics. That's like building the evolutionary family tree based on traits.
Exactly. Using shared characteristics, physical, and now sometimes genetic data when possible, though not for these guys, obviously. These analyses showed that the way species had been grouped within Geosaurus, well, didn't really reflect their true evolutionary relationships. The genus, as it was defined then, wasn't monophyletic.
Monophyletic, okay, that sounds technical. What's that mean, simply?
It basically means a natural group. All the species in it share one single common ancestor, and crucially, all the descendants of that ancestor are included. The old Geosaurus grouping didn't fit that definition. It was kind of a mixed bag.
Ah, okay, so the family tree needed some serious redrawing based on this new analysis.
Precisely. It wasn't a clean branch. So the traditional Geosaurus family portrait needed rearranging to show who was actually related to whom.
So lots of species moving house, evolutionarily speaking.
You could say that. It led to a big reassessment. Lots of species that used to be called Geosaurus, including G. suevicus, like we said, but also G. saltillense, G. vignoti, G. aracanensis, even one called Rachisaurus gracilis was in there at one point. They all got moved. Reassigned to Crocosaurus or other genera where they fit better.
Wow, that's a lot of taxonomic spring cleaning. Really shows how science corrects itself.
It really does. It's a process. But it wasn't just species moving out. Some went the other way. Species initially put in other genera were actually found to belong in Geosaurus.
Oh, really? Like which ones?
Well, G. grandis, that was originally classified as a Crocosaurus, and G. laparenti was first thought to be a Dacosaurus, but the newer analyses showed, no, they actually belong in Geosaurus.
So it works both ways, finding the right home for each species.
Exactly. It's all about refining the picture as we get more fossils, better techniques.
Okay. What about Geosaurus carpenteri? I think I saw that name.
Oh, yes, G. carpenteri. That one was also initially thought to be a species of Dacosaurus, but now it's actually been given its own separate genus, Torvanustes.
Torvanustes. Okay, another branch. It just shows how detailed this gets.
It really does, constantly refining based on the evidence.
Always changing, always improving. Now, you mentioned finds outside Germany. Something about Cuba and Argentina.
Right. There was an unnamed specimen, potentially Geosaurus, found in the Oxfordian Jaguar Formation in Cuba. But much like G. suevicus, later studies suggested it's probably more closely related to Crocosaurus.
Okay, so likely not a true Geosaurus. And Argentina.
Yes, actual Geosaurus fossils have been reported from the Vaca Muerta Formation there, which is important because it shows the genus wasn't just limited to Europe, it had a wider range.
Interesting. So from what seemed maybe a bit messy, we now have a much clearer, although still evolving, idea of who the real Geosaurus species are. So what about the world they lived in, their paleoecology?
Right, the environment. The Mernsheim Formation, that's the source of the famous Solnhofen limestone fossils in Bavaria, Germany, gives us an amazing window.
Solnhofen, yeah. Incredible preservation there.
Incredible. And this ecosystem from the early Tithonian age was buzzing with different crocodiliforms. You had Geosaurus giganteus, Dacosaurus maximus, Crocosaurus suevicus, and Rachisaurus gracilis, all swimming around together. Plus another marine reptile, Steniosaurus.
Wow, hold on. That sounds like a very crowded ocean. All those big predators in one place. How did that even work?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The leading theory is something called niche partitioning.
Niche partitioning, meaning they weren't all doing exactly the same thing.
Exactly. The idea is that these different species probably specialized. They occupied slightly different ecological roles or niches. ate different things, hunted in different ways, which would cut down on direct competition.
Okay, that makes sense. Like different tools for different jobs in the same workshop. So what were the likely roles in this ancient Solnhofen Sea?
Well, you look at the big guys. G. giganteus and D. maximus, large size, short, powerful snouts, those big serrated teeth we talked about.
Yeah, the slashing teeth.
Right. They were likely the top predators, the apex guys, equipped to take down larger prey.
Okay, the heavy hitters. What about the others?
Then you have Cricosaurus suevicus and Rhaphosaurus gracilis. They had longer snouts, generally smaller teeth. They probably focused more on fish, piscivores,
Ah, the fish specialists.
probably, and Brachiosaurus being more lightly built, maybe even specialized in smaller, quicker fish or other smaller sea creatures. So subtle differences in their bodies likely meant differences in hunting style and what they ate.
So even back then, you had this kind of tiered system, the big bruisers like Geosaurus and Dacosaurus on top, and the sleeker fish eaters like Cricosaurus and Rhaphosaurus doing their thing. It really paints a cool picture of that ecosystem.
It really does, and it shows how even within groups that seem similar, like these marine crocs, small variations can allow lots of different species to coexist by basically divvying up the resources.
Fascinating stuff. Okay, so as we kind of wrap up our deep dive on Geosaurus here, what are the main things we should take away?
I think the key points are Geosaurus, it was this really incredible marine crocodile from the late Jurassic and early Cretaceous. Second, our understanding, especially its classification, has changed a lot thanks to ongoing science, sorting out those early mix-ups.
Like the genus got redefined.
Exactly. And finally, it wasn't alone. It was part of this complex ancient sea world, sharing space with other specialized reptiles, showing these intricate ecosystems back then. It's just a great example of how our knowledge of ancient life is always, being updated, getting more detailed.
So even for creatures gone for millions of years, the story keeps evolving as we find more clues. Okay, that leads us perfectly to our final thought for you, the listener. Given that big mystery about Geosaurus reproduction, no eggs, no nests found, what kind of unique adaptations might these amazing animals have needed to reproduce successfully out there in the ocean? And maybe what discoveries are still waiting out there that could finally solve this puzzle about their lives? Definitely something to think about.